Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Mohsin Mughal. Coming home from a disappointing summit in Hanoi, US President Donald Trump announced that 100% of Daesh's territory in Syria had been captured. His remarks were immediately debunked by reports from the ground. So is Trump doubling down on his previous calls to wrap it up and call it quits in Syria? And what will this mean for the region? Turkey has long been critical of the US strategy of indiscriminate bombing and using one terror group to fight another. But just how different has Ankara's approach been compared to Washington's? James Kim has the details.
A peace rally in Ankara descends into chaos after suicide bombers launched the deadliest terrorist attack in Turkey's modern history. 103 people are killed and more than 500 are wounded. The coordinated blasts bear all the trademarks of Daesh, who at the time was at the height of its power. Controlling more than 100,000 square kilometers of Iraq and Syria, and with tens of thousands of fighters and $2 billion at its disposal, according to some estimates, the terror group had many trappings of a functioning state. With that newfound power, the group began projecting its terror deep into neighboring countries, including Turkey. In just a few short years, the country would go on to suffer more than a dozen terrorist attacks that killed hundreds of people. An international coalition forged in September 2014 to fight Daesh was initially slow to respond. But a major turning point came in July the following year, after Turkey allowed the use of its Incirlik air base to hit the terror group inside Syria. Regular air raids would soon follow, pounding Daesh strongholds. Alongside the stepped-up military strikes, Turkey launched a massive internal hunt for suspected Daesh terrorists. From 2015 to 2018, Turkey arrested thousands of Daesh suspects and barred tens of thousands from entering the country, cutting off a crucial lifeline of new recruits and blocking terrorists from carrying out further attacks abroad. But not all of the attacks could be thwarted. One was a suicide bombing on a wedding in the city of Gaziantep that killed 57 people in August of 2016. For Turkey, it became clear that a ground offensive into Syrian territory was inevitable.
That region needed to be cleared from ISIS, but also to block the expansion of the PYD forces or SDF forces westwards. So that was the breaking point, I believe, in about 2 years ago or a year and a half, when Turkey decided that it needed to intervene on the ground.
Just 2 days after the wedding attack, Turkey launched Operation Euphrates Shield alongside the Free Syrian Army to clear Turkey's border of Daesh fighters. The operation also set up safe zones in places like Jarablus, where thousands of Syrian refugees were able to return home. It was a strategy different than other coalition partners.
Well, unfortunately, the United States has always took a very narrow approach of countering terrorism, not just with ISIS, but with Al-Qaeda and others, by basically using the Air Force and bombing, quote, the hell out of those people.
Turkey has also long criticized the US decision to use the PKK-linked YPG terror group to fight Daesh, condemning the arming of one terrorist group to fight another. And now, with the US set to withdraw most of its troops from Syria, questions remain on who will fill the power vacuum left in northern Syria. James Kim, Straight Talk.
And to break down Turkey's role in fighting Daesh and what the defeat of the terror group in northern Syria could mean for the region, I'm joined now by Alexei Klebnikov, who's a political analyst at the Russian International Affairs Council in Moscow, and Aylan Unvernoy, who's an associate professor of international relations at the İstinye University in Istanbul. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us here. Aylan, how critical has Turkey's role been in the fight against Daesh?
It was, of course, one of the major role played by Turkey because, as you know, that most of the foreign terrorist fighters use Turkey as a transit country. So from this perspective, because of the geographic proximity of Turkey, and also its basic main role in preventing the foreign terrorist fighters to enter the Syria and Iraq to join the ISIS forces made a vulnerable target for terrorist attacks of ISIS. As you know that between especially 2015 and 2017, there was Turkey was hit by a wave of terrorist attacks, especially major cities.
In many instances, Turkey has been a victim of Daesh terrorism as
one
well.
of the major victims of Daesh.
But we wanted to get on some specifics. Some specific events that took place led to Turkey's involvement as well in the fight against Daesh. What were those steps that Turkey took, tangible steps that Turkey took in the fight against Daesh?
Yes, most of the, maybe the one of the most important tangible step taken by Turkey right after Daesh killed the Turkish soldiers. It's opened the Incirlik air base to US-led coalition forces to their fight against Daesh. And so it was one of the major steps because it made easier and effective of the war and the airstrikes against the Daesh targets more efficient and quick for them.
So it was a very strategic involvement, to say. Not much could have been achieved without Turkey's involvement in the fight against
Previously,
Daesh.
they were using the other air bases, but not as much.
Not
was effective as of course. It was a game changer.
Much needed edge to in the fight against Daesh.
Yeah.
Alexei, all indications, at least for now, say that Daesh has lost ground. It's decimated in a way. Will it still be a threat?
Well, the tricky thing about all radical ideologies that until ideology exists, I mean, the threat exists. So physical elimination and losing the ground in Syria or Iraq or elsewhere does not guarantee that this threat of Daesh ideology ceases to exist. For example, for several years now, Daesh fighters are moving to Afghanistan and to Libya, where they found more safe haven than in Syria, especially since 2015, when Russia joined the military forces on the ground, as Turkey did, and US-led anti-ISIS coalition. So definitely that is not the end, but if we look at this picture, particularly in Syria, from the angle of whether Daesh project as a state project, it definitely
has been defeated,
collapsed, and there is not much prospect for that in the future. But definitely the
geographical boundaries,
ideological threat,
remains.
Remains.
So we do need a post-Daesh strategy as well. Yes. Where do you think Turkey fits in that?
Yes, as I told you before, it's still an important country in terms of preventing, because there will be still the propaganda of Daesh in the post-Daesh area as well, because the remaining Daesh wives, children, and the ideology is there. And so there are too many things that should be done. And Turkey is already part of the no-entry list, and it should be, this cooperation should be continued with the other countries because it needed much. And also, of course, not just the no-entry list, but also the financing these kind of terrorist organizations. Their links with the other organized crime groups, and also the even the reconstruction of Syria, and also reconstruction of in Iraq after in the areas liberated from the Daesh is important, because we should also look at the conditions which created the Daesh: bad governance, corruption, weak local authorities, and also the rising sectarianism and the conflict between this sectarian.
That's where Turkey has a very important role to play.
So not just Turkey, in Turkey's role with the other countries as well.
So there is a lot of international cooperation needed. But talking about cooperation, I want to come to this part of the discussion. You mentioned this in the beginning as well. We need a longer strategy, a long-term strategy. Daesh might be decimated geographically, but ideology needs to be countered. So how do you think all the coalition partners and Turkey, part of it, coming together to counter that threat?
Well, that's the major issue, the major obstacle is that all actors involved in the conflict in Syria supporting different groups and pursuing different interests. With that, until you have a common ground, you cannot start cooperating. Look, even in this Astana format where Russia, Turkey, and Iran are present, these three countries, they also have quite a lot of differences, and they have quite a lot of even disagreements on different issues inside Syria. So even if these three partners cannot find a common ground or reach a breakthrough on the Syrian conflict, so I think it's too early to talk or to say that that something should be done in order to create this long-term anti-Daesh strategy. What needs to be done in the first place is to find at least to get closer to political solution in Syria and to get done with Idlib issue and east of Euphrates.
Do you agree to that, Dr. Aylan?
Yes, actually, Turkey made a good job in Jarablus because it defeated ISIS there. And also, after it liberated the Jarablus from the ISIS, it rebuilt the city, and which made the Syrian refugees, more than 300,000 refugees, went back to their territory and started to live there. So this was a good medal achieved. As I told you, of course, the political solution and all they find a common ground between the powers involved in the Syrian crisis is important, but also the burden sharing, of course, is important too, because not that it's just finished at the political end of the political crisis, but also the reconstruction of these regions also becoming important. But also it's part of this common ground, because people who doesn't support the regime, who will not also provide support to and financial aid to the regime.
Interesting points.
So that's the problem. That will be the next problem we will face in Syria.
After the military stage, you will be over. The political stage will come at the forefront.
And if it goes on, and then the revival of Daesh or Daesh kind terrorist organization will be possible. So
there is need for a long-term strategy.
Yeah.
There's need for international cooperation.
Yeah.
Dr. Aylan, Alexei, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Azerbaijan just marked the 27th anniversary of the Khojaly Massacre. Back in 1992, Armenian forces killed more than 600 Azerbaijanis in the village of Khojaly. The killings stemmed from a conflict between the two countries during the early 90s, which forced nearly 1 million people to flee their homes. The scars of that massacre are still being felt today among countless families in Azerbaijan. Omar Kablan traveled to Baku to meet some of them.
Nezaket Huseynova lost her husband and 5 other family members 27 years ago in Khojaly. She was 25 years old when Armenian and Russian troops entered the town and killed at least 160 Azerbaijanis. Her husband died trying to protect her and their 2 children.
Armenians surrounded Khojaly from all sides, entered the city and killed everyone they met, including children, women, men. February is a black month for us. It took our happiness from us. My grandchildren ask me about their grandfather and about Khojaly. I tell them they should never forget that tragic day and tell their children in the future, so that it may never be forgotten.
Azerbaijan says more than 600 people were killed, which would make Khojaly the largest massacre in the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Rauf Arifoglu is a journalist who publishes a newspaper called Yeni Musavat. He says at the time, national media were reporting that 2 people had died, but he was illegally publishing his newspaper from Georgia, so he could report that hundreds had been killed in Khojaly.
To publish a newspaper like this under the Soviet Union was like signing your own death warrants. Our citizens in Khojaly were killed because they were Turkish, because they were Azerbaijanis. Armenians claimed our lands illegally and by force. They claimed an imaginative state. My newspaper continues to be published, and we wait for the day when we can run a story about those responsible being punished.
The Khojaly massacre has left deep wounds on the people of Azerbaijan from which they haven't fully healed from. And after 27 years, still no one has been held accountable. The victims continue to call for justice for past crimes, but the tense relations between politicians in Baku and Yerevan need to be resolved first. Azerbaijan officials say a diplomatic solution is their priority, but if diplomacy fails, another war with Armenia is not off the table.
Azerbaijan continues peaceful negotiations, and Azerbaijan is the most interested state in the earliest peaceful settlement of the Armenia-Azerbaijan Nagorno-karabakh conflict. Of course, the conflict is ongoing. Ceasefire does not mean the end of the conflict.
Despite relative calm over the past 2 decades, both sides have had soldiers and civilians killed in sporadic breaches of the ceasefire. The most serious was in April 2016, when war once again erupted between the two sides. More than 400 people were killed. Since then, there's been very little progress between the two countries towards a solution. And it's likely that victims of the war like Huseynova will have a lot longer to wait for a resolution. Omar Kablan, Straight Talk, Baku, Azerbaijan.
And to discuss this further, joining me now is the Azerbaijani ambassador to Turkey, Khazar Ibrahim. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming to Straight Talk. I just want to ask you, 27 years since the Khojaly massacre took place, how does this anniversary resonate amongst the Azerbaijanis?
Of course it resonates among all Azerbaijanis in the world, in Azerbaijan. We all consider ourselves from Khojaly, from Karabakh, from Shusha, because there is not a single person in Azerbaijan who has not been affected by that. It could be morally, it could be family-wise, it could be of any kind. So therefore we lived with that for the last 27 years and probably will live our entire lives.
As you said, there's not even a single person from that country who hasn't been touched by this massacre. Do you have any personal memories?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I do have my memories. I was 14 years old. I do remember like it was yesterday. I was carrying stuff to my sister's house, and my hometown is quite far away from Khojaly. And when I was coming back, one older person told me, "My son, you know what is happening today?" And I was like, because we had all these tragedies, we had occupation, we had military aggression by Armenia then, so I would have expected that something bad happened, but I could not have imagined so harsh. And he told me, he said, well, it's huge massacre. People are being killed, kids, women. So when you're 14 years old, when you're at school, and when you're hearing things like this, and you can never forget it, you know, it's really impossible.
Kids, women, children, nearly 613 Azerbaijanis got massacred. What do you think, and the fact is that no Armenian has ever faced trial. What do you think it says about the role of international community? Do you think they've failed Azerbaijan somewhere?
I think they failed not only Azerbaijan, they failed humanity, because it's innocent people. There was not a single combatant then in Khojaly. It was, as you said, kids, women, elderly people who were massacred, despite the fact that they had even no weapons to resist. And there had to be humanitarian corridor, and when they tried to flee, they were ambushed and killed, irrespective of who they were and in what conditions they were. Yes, international community failed us, but mostly they failed these innocent people. And the even bigger problem is that those people who perpetrated this massacre, and in fact it's genocide, those people afterwards said that they pre-planned it, they wanted to punish us, and they wanted actually to show that they were not joking with Azerbaijanis. These people then became leaders of Republic of Armenia, and international community embraced them in some sense. This is really tragedy of international system and international order we're having. It
goes to show there isn't enough global recognition of the massacre. what is Azerbaijan doing to get the global community to recognize it as a massacre?
I wouldn't say that there is no global recognition, because there's several states, several countries, there's several states in the United States, for example, which have recognized Khojaly as genocide or massacre. And Azerbaijan, of course, trying to deliver this message to the world and trying to show what really has happened. And it's not just Azerbaijan, because there were eyewitnesses among Azerbaijanis, but also there were some journalists coming from the West and from other parts of the world. And they actually delivered these messages as well. In the Western media, in some international non-governmental organizations, there were some depictions of this tragedy and all this barbarity which has happened and will continue this way. But of course, we all know, and it's not a secret, that there are double standards in international arena. Unfortunately, we see it not only in Azerbaijan, we see it in many other places. But of course, I'm coming from Azerbaijan, and not only as a diplomat, but also as a human being. For me, it's very hard to see that when you're having tragedies like this, when you're having innocent lives lost, international community does not respond properly.
And what are you trying to do to get that response?
Well, actually, we are delivering our message. For example, as ambassador of Azerbaijan in Turkey, now I'm in Istanbul, I'm flying to Adana, we're having another conference there. Yesterday we had 5 events in Ankara among the diplomats. We had it with Lawyers Association, we had it at several universities, we had at 2 other municipalities. We had event today at the embassy, which was together with the Youth Forum of Islamic Cooperation. We had in Istanbul events. We had all around Turkey. And there is recognition from every spectrum in Turkey, for example. And I'm in Turkey. I'm trying to do it
Beyond
here.
Turkey?
Beyond Turkey in many other parts. For example, 2 days ago, there was a huge demonstration in Brussels, basically capital of Europe. And Azerbaijanis from all around Europe came and demonstrated and called for the justice for Khojaly. And they were joined actually by Europeans because, well, it's really impossible. It was just 27 years ago. It's really impossible not to know what has happened. When things happen centuries ago, you have to go into archives, you have to look into the things. But when things happen just less than 3 decades ago, and you still have the people
who are still alive and witness.
Absolutely, and who are eyewitnesses. We had 4 of them in Ankara, for example, and they went to other parts of Turkey. And one person, the eyewitness, he himself, he was doctor, he was medical doctor. He was tortured, he was in front of his eyes. Several of his relatives, neighbors were killed, maimed. When you're having this, it's really impossible.
And despite that, there are still countries who have shut their eyes to the reality that you want to say.
That's absolutely true, and it's really unfortunate. But despite the fact, as you said, that they shut their eyes, and despite the fact we're having double standards, we'll continue to demand justice for Khojaly.
Who are these countries?
Well, I don't want to name them. I don't want to name them. But what I want to say is that those who are responsible by international law, by their commitments to help to solve the conflict, to help to solve and to put an end to the continued illegal military occupation of Azerbaijani territories by Armenia, they have to step up.
Okay, silence is not the answer. You talked about the Armenian occupation of Nagorno-karabakh, which is the larger conflict. And I just want to get your comment on, do you see Armenia still pursuing its expansionism? Are they even willing to discuss the conflict?
Yeah, we do discuss. We do discuss, and we have to put it straight. We do discuss. We have, through OSCE, we have Minsk Group, we have Minsk Group co-chairs, and through that format, we are discussing it. Foreign ministers are meeting. There was some contacts between the presidents with the new leadership in Armenia. We do really hope that they will be more realistic, they will be more humane, and they will be more pragmatic in order to understand there is no other way than to recognize your mistakes, your crimes, and also to understand, also for the better future of Armenia, they cannot continue the occupation, illegal and military occupation of the territories of the neighbors. So we are discussing that. But more important question here is probably why others who are responsible to convince those who perpetrated these crimes, who continue occupation, to do their work and persuade them to be committed to international law. So Turkey did it as brother, but Turkey was very much committed to international law and international commitments. So Turkey is here is a credible player.
Ambassador Khazar Ibrahim, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Mohsin Mughal. If you have got any comments, do share them with us on Twitter with hashtag Straight Talk. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, take care and goodbye.